What's up? No, man, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. What's going on, Sean? Everything all right?
Can you hear me now?
What's up?
Can y'all hear me now, Sergio? I'm gonna wait till he replies to let me know. Sorry, we're still getting the kinks and the bugs worked out. Y'all know how it goes, how it is.
So
Um,
basically, for the last couple of seconds, Sean was talking about he might not be traveling anymore for the rest of the season or
Thank
for
you,
the rest of
Mark.
the year.
All right, Sergio says we're good. Yeah, so I think work has finally slowed down for the holiday season as clients are kind of starting to taper off for their holidays as well. And it looks likely that I may not have to travel again until next year. So that's after the way this year in travel has gone, that is quite the relief to say the least. Um, and I am definitely looking forward to the holidays just to relax and kick back a little bit. I don't know about yourself. Uh,
Oh, for sure.
but I was going to say, someone who I hope is not looking forward to the holidays and kicking back is Tab Ramos and Matt Jordan. I
Oh yeah.
sincerely hope they're not planning to just, it's the holidays. We're going to take like 4 weeks off and then we'll come back in like early January and maybe we'll make an offer to somebody to a team somewhere, that sort of thing.
No, look. I won't be that much of a prick for lack of a better term, but I'll give them Thanksgiving Day off and Christmas Day and New Year's Eve.
Oh man,
I'll let them get a little little time there.
you're a tough boss, man. Wow, that's rough.
Man, hey man, it's been rough out here these last couple of seasons.
There's some work to be done for sure. And we want to talk about that tonight. There was a very good, very intense conversation, and I say intense. I don't mean intense in like it was a heated conversation, but I mean intense in terms of there were a lot of really good points that were brought up. Um, no, Sergio, it's not the day after MLS Cup. The draft's always in like January. Is there a draft? Probably yes. It's usually like the waiver or re-entry draft. That first draft that they have right after MLS Cup, I don't think it's the day after. It's usually like the next week, like on like Monday or Tuesday. Usually Tuesday. That particular draft is a draft where just about every team passes. I think maybe one team every year tries to pull a stunt and pick a player in that draft, but it usually ends up pretty much a non-event. Um, but yeah, so we want to talk Tab Ramos. We want to talk about and I know this is a Dynamo podcast, but I really want to talk about the Darlington Nagby Columbus Crew Atlanta United trade, and I want to talk about what that particular trade means, and how much that trade helps highlight or maybe explain some fan frustrations and um, maybe kind of talk about those a little bit. And that makes me glad Mark is, of course, with me every week now because I like his point of view. And I like the fact that he a lot of times has no problem playing devil's advocate and willing to play the other side of the issue or the discussion because I think
I'll make sure.
I was just going to say, I think in this particular case, it's very valid to have that, especially around what we want to talk about regarding that particular trade. Go ahead, Mark.
I'll make sure. I'll make sure when once both of us start getting live on the camera, I buy little horns, to go with the persona.
I shouldn't say this, Mark, but I actually have the capability to set up a soundboard on my computer that would actually let me play sound effects on live and on the fly. That's something I intend to do at some point. It's just I kind of want to get the stream itself set up and configured to work pretty well. Um,
Babysit.
I have not, and just so you know, Mark, I have not received a single notification about drop frames. I feel like that's a win right there, because
Yeah, there you go.
usually that's a constant.
Look at the price of the things.
That's right. See, we're improving every week. Every week's a new improvement. And guys, we are committing to, as best we can, still trying to do this every week. Obviously, we'll take Thanksgiving week off, and I think Christmas falls on like a Wednesday or something like that this year. But we'll probably take the Christmas week and Thanksgiving week off. But we do intend to, as much as we can, still stream every week. The difference being we're only probably going to do an hour during the off season unless there's some big breaking news or big discussion that we want to have. Because, again, it's the more you guys engage, the more likely we are to keep going after the first hour, or, once we're back to the regular season, the full 2 hours into a third hour. I know Mark's going, oh God, what have I gotten myself into? But hey, hashtag make it 3 is a previous trend for the show. And tell you what, there have definitely, that's right. And there have definitely been times where listeners and viewers have definitely gotten me to keep going. And I'm usually like, all right, we're stopping right here, guys. This is it. And then they say something, and it's like, all right, we got to talk for the next 45 minutes about what they just talked about.
It's all about engagement. That's why we do these podcasts, and that's why people get involved in these type of deals. Because the more followers you have, and the more people get engaged with you. The more you keep going, and the more you want to give out. So supply and demand. That's all we can do.
Absolutely. And I want to say hi to Jeff and Sergio, Brian, Darby. I don't know if Cisco's out there tonight. He's got a hellacious work schedule for the next few weeks. But I wanted to throw him a shout out because the guy is dedicated as all get out. And anyone else who's listening that you haven't chimed in or anything, we appreciate you guys tuning in every week. And especially this week, because I can promise you this week is definitely a week worth tuning into. Not that every week isn't, but this week's discussion in particular, I really do feel like is going to be a big time win for just about everybody that's tuned in and listening, and getting a chance to take part in this discussion I think will be big too. With that being said, Mark, before we dive into the NAGB fun, is there anything in particular you want to talk about before we dive into that stuff?
So, I didn't really get to catch the press conference when it went live and stuff like that, work and all that other stuff that gets in the way.
What?
But no, I kind of got a crash course in it a couple hours back, whatever. And from everything that I grasped from the presser, it was good, man. You can't really expect too much from an introductory conference, whatever. And I like the way he engaged himself with the Latin media and with regular media as well. And I think it's gonna be great, man. I think he just basically just solidifies the fact that that he wanted to come here. He wants to take the Dynamo to the next level and get him back up there in the top echelon of MLS. And let's hope that he does it, and let's hope that he gets the backing needed to make that happen.
I want to point out that I think, and you kind of touched on it, but I want to take it to kind of a little further. We said that one of the things we wanted out of a coach was a guy who wanted to actually come here and coach. Not a guy that he saw the dollar signs and went, that's the job for me, but a guy who legitimately saw the opportunity that Houston affords a coach from a position of youth development, from a position of a head coaching opportunity of an MLS franchise, the position of an opportunity to take a struggling team into an era where perhaps they can turn those fortunes around. A guy who wanted to embrace all of that. And listening to Tab Ramos speak, it is very clear that he is that guy. He is that guy that came into this eyes wide open. He knows what he's getting into. He understands the challenges that are in front of him, but he's willing to deal with them and he's willing to work with them. He's not going to get frustrated about them. He's just going to go about his business and do what he can to make the team better. And that makes me happy.
And there's two quotes that from the whole conference that really got me. The first one was about when they asked about the academy, what are the chances of academy players making to the first team, and he basically goes, "Look, the door is open for anybody to make it to the first team. You just got to show that you deserve to be there. You got to earn that spot," which is great, which is really great to hear because. And he said so himself. I don't care if the kid is 15, 16, 17 years old. If that kid deserves a spot in the first team under me, he will be there in that first team. And another quote or whatever that got my attention was, that when he said that Houston is, bigger than Uruguay, And it's facts. And I've always said this in prior conversations with people that I know closely who follow soccer and who talk to me on Twitter. Uruguay is such a powerhouse of a soccer country, and they only have 3 million people in that country. They've won World Cups, they've won Copa Americas, they've won, multiple international tournaments. And for a country of 3 million people to achieve what they achieved as a country, and Houston being a city of 4 or 5 million people, there's so much potential here. It's a hotbed of talent.
Absolutely. And, and we kind of touched, or at least I touched on that when we were talking about the coaches that we wanted, which I still can't believe I got the coach I wanted, which is amazing. But
Stop bragging.
oh no, that's never going away. That is, I mean, come on. If you had gotten Muhammad, you would have just like died. You'd have been like, "This is the greatest thing ever." You would have never you would have never stopped talking about it. Every week you'd bring it up. I promise I'll stop talking about it. Maybe around the beginning of the season. No, I'm just kidding. But what I
Uh,
wanted to say with that was when we were talking about coaches we wanted to see, and the reason I was real high on Tab is because of his capability of developing youth, his past experience developing youth, and his understanding of how you bring youth players into the fold, how you begin to help them become professional players beyond just that kind of, okay, we're doing a youth camp type thing. Now I need to see Tab take it to the next level, and I need to see him do it on a day-to-day basis where he's able to take those players that are on the cusp of becoming, okay, they could go to college and they could play college ball, but they would rather dive into the pro game and start to build start to build their career that they want to have professionally. And I think Tab is the right coach to be able to do that, but I need to see him do that beginning this season. Now, that doesn't mean I need to see players coming out of RGV, or I need to see players coming out of Brazos Valley, or I need to see players coming out of the academy this season. What I want to see, though, is a player from one of those three that at least gets an opportunity outside of Open Cup. I want to see a player that gets an opportunity in an MLS match, even in the garbage time minutes, even at the tail end of a match when we're up 3-0. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. But I need to see players getting minutes that deserve them, even if they're players that we don't expect to start for another 2 to 3 seasons, because teams that bring those players in and are willing to give those players minutes early and during the season find more times than not those players end up becoming long-term contributors, and they fit their system better overall. Atlanta's a good example. LAFC, LA Galaxy, New York Red Bulls. The list goes on and on. Seattle's a great example of that too. When you
yeah.
have a young player coming out of not just your academy, but coming out of your USL club or otherwise, again, it doesn't have to be a whole bunch of players. Just give me one. If I see one player this season that gets MLS minutes and shows that, you know what, he's learning, he's improving, that's good enough for me. Like, and it doesn't have to be starter MLS minutes. I could have him as a super sub. I can have him as a 80th minute sub, as an 85th minute sub, as a stoppage time sub, multiple times throughout the season. I'm okay with that. That to me shows growth and shows development, and that is what I'm looking for this season. So let me ask you, Mark, what are you looking for this season from Tab Ramos, and what do you consider a mark of success for this particular season?
No, and for sure. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, and especially when you bring a character like Ramos into this system, with his expertise of growing the youth, developing the youth. Yeah, obviously, I want to see some youth players make it to the next level. But obviously, we get his main focus is the first team and making sure that the club, succeeds under him in the first year. Because let's let's not make this let's not make this a cake and walk. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let's not make it as easy on him either. I mean, he's come into a tough situation where, unfortunately for the last couple of years, the Dynamo haven't been, top tier teams. And I think that he wants to make playoffs his first year. And the way he talks, he chose this situation because the core of players available to him in this team, he likes what he can do with these players, being more attacking team. being more aggressive. That's the word that he keeps repeating in his interviews. Aggressive, being more once they score a goal, they want to go score another one. So I'm excited to see that, man. And to see hopefully score lines of 5-0 or 4-2 and stuff like that. And I hope for this season coming up that playoffs are a possibility. That's really what I'm looking forward to. I mean, obviously, we got to take into account what kind of players to bring in, all that other stuff. But I think for me, if we make the playoffs this year, I think that's a win for me.
So the reason I bring up the what do you consider to be a success, or what will make the mark of a successful season, is because the conversation that happened earlier this morning was kind of tied to that. So let me kind of set the stage a little bit. We're sitting there, we're talking about the Darlington Nagbe report, or the report that Darlington Nagbe has been traded from Atlanta United to Columbus for, and I quote, lots and lots of GAM and TAM and associated other
And damn,
allocation monies. And damn. TAM, GAM, thank you, ma'am. But I have a question, and this is as much for you, Mark, as it is for our listeners. If the Dynamo were to make a similar trade, let's say for someone other than Nagby, because Nagby's already been traded, but a trade of the same type of caliber for the same caliber of player, do you think, in your opinion, does that satisfy your requirement or your desire for ownership to spend more money? Does that answer that desire?
I think for me personally, if it's like, I hate to be in that Matt Jordan level of answering questions if the right player, but I mean it depends on the player that they bring in. I mean, because I took the time to kind of go down a list of players in the league that are kind of available depending on the right prices. Depending on how much GAM and TAM and DAM the Dynamo are willing to send over to that other club. But when Darlington Nagbe got traded from the Timber to Atlanta, he got traded for almost a little over $1 million worth of GAM and TAM to Atlanta, and a
Correction.
million.
Correction. It was 750,000 in allocation money guaranteed, and then up to 1.25 million, depending on his output with Atlanta United and associated bonuses. I want to correct that only because I think that's really important, because that 1.25 million is a big difference from 750,000. Go ahead, continue.
No, yeah. I saw that, but I saw it was 700K in GAM and 350 in TAM or something like that. And then there was the other incentive laden things if this happened and this happened. But that's neither here or there. So if the Dynamo spend $1 million, or per se 750,000 to $1 million on a player to bring them in, I guess the question is, would that satisfy my appetite? Yes. I mean that's you bring, and especially if it's a player that's quality in MLS, because this transaction is for MLS players only. We're not talking about bringing foreign players or anybody out from other leagues or anything like that. But if you spend $1 million on an MLS player, then you're spending on a player that first and foremost has experience in the league. Secondly, you targeted this player, so that means this player, you already see this player playing in your system, meaning that he can be a difference maker in your system, or he can bring up the quality in whatever position you're targeting for that player. So it would satisfy me. Obviously, it wouldn't quench my whole thirst, but it would satisfy me. It'd be a nice little appetizer to start the off season.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question, and again, chat, this is as much for you guys, that same question. The reason I asked that question is this is important. Allocation money does not show up in salary budget numbers, so the Dynamo could make a move of this type and still end up in the bottom five as spending. Those fans that are pleading for more spending, would they be satisfied with that type of move, or do you think that they're still going to want more? Do you still want more after that? You just said that would be kind of a great way to whet your appetite, but if that's let's say that's the biggest move that they make this offseason, would that be would you be content with that, or are you expecting more than that type of a move?
Oh, no, okay. Let's look at it this way. Before the downward spirals happened, nobody looked at the salary cap. When 2017 happened and we went on the Western Conference Finals, nobody cared about the salary cap. Nobody cared that we were still bottom 5 team payroll wise that year. So if this is the only acquisition and this player turns it around for us and we're in the playoffs next year, cool. I'm great. Like I said, my expectation, my successful season for under Ramos this year would be playoffs, whether it's 7th seed or whatever. But if that's the only player that they targeted and they got that player and that player helped turn the season around, or he became that glue piece to make this team not crumble under pressure or fall off in the second half, then great. Because like I said, the team is already. So I would be happy with it if it's the only acquisition and it turned around our season, our next season.
Let me ask this, following up on that. Do you feel like Elise and Vera would be or could be starters for the 4 teams that were in the conference semifinals? That would be LAFC, Seattle, Toronto, and who was the other Eastern Conference team? It wasn't New York City. It was who they faced. No, they faced TFC.
Yeah,
it was TFC and who did TFC beat? I don't remember. Someone in chat will help us out.
Yeah. I was Atlanta United.
Ah, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot about the losers. I'm sorry. It happens.
No, so obviously, I mean, if we're talking about Elise, I don't think he makes it on Atlanta United because obviously Martinez, both Martinez's and then Barco. If we're talking him on Seattle, it might be a possibility depending because they have Morris, they have what's the different Peru, Rudis and what's the other cat's name? I'm drawing a blank, but
Rui Diaz and Lodero.
Yeah, Ladero, but they're more of a 4-4-2, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they tend to. It's like a 4-4-2 or 4-3-1-2, something like that.
Yeah, and then if out of those sports teams, if Elise was gonna make a squad, I would probably say maybe Toronto FC right now at the moment, especially because Altidor's out and all that stuff, and then it would be a great 1-2 punch with him and Pozuelo up there. Pozuelo dropping the dimes and him scoring the goals. But that would be the only team I think he would make the starting lineup right now, currently constructed. Maybe Toronto FC, because he's not making LAFC. I'm sorry, Vela, Rossi, and then the young kid from Uruguay. I think his name is Brian Rodriguez.
Sure.
Or even he's not making that team.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who. Yeah, so the reason I asked this though is I want you to exclude their current roster necessarily, and I want you to think the player and kind of the franchise itself. Is Elise a starter on those types of teams? Because if they're going to, let's say LAFC were to get Elise, they're going to find a way to play him up top. They're going to find a way to incorporate him in with Vela and with De Rossi. I don't know what they do with that, but they figure out a way to make it work. So the question is, if they landed an Elise, let's say they did it through a allocation trade or something of that nature, whatever. If one of those, if any of those 4 teams were to do it, would they find a way to start the player, or is that player going to then become kind of a substitute off the bench? I'm not looking at their necessarily their current roster makeup, but is the player good enough to be on the Final 4 in a starting position?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah. Okay. So when it's laced out like that, yeah, for sure. At least starts in all 4 of those squads.
Okay.
For sure.
So then
now
Vera is the next question.
Vera is tricky because Vera, he did such a great job his first season with us, and he covered up a lot, that we don't recognize. that because obviously those stats
This
don't show up
season would
on
have been so much worse without him.
yeah, exactly. You know, now I'm gonna I'm gonna have to fall under a little bit of guilt here that obviously I know more of the attacking systems in the MLS than I do more of the defensive schemes, because it's not really a defensive league per se. But I think I think Vera would crack some of these teams. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head like who, but I mean I don't know maybe at least two of them, but at least for sure they would make room for him to start in the starting 11, all 14.
So what you're telling me is we have players that are good enough. They're good enough. I mean that's what I'm looking for, right? Is when I'm
We do.
asking, when I'm asking that question because have heard it repeatedly said by some fans. I'm not going to say fans necessarily in our chat, but some fans that our team sucks. The players aren't good enough. They wouldn't be good enough to play for other teams, etc. And I have to question that mentality. These players, now I'm not saying every player would be a starter on LAFC or would be a starter on TFC
No,
or
no.
whatever. But these players, at least a good chunk of them or a few of them, are good enough to find starting positions on teams that are in the not only in the MLS Cup final, but they were in the semifinals and in even before that. Look, it's not that we haven't had the talent, and I've said it over and over. It's not that we haven't had the talent or the capability or the players. It's that we haven't really found the way to incorporate that in a way where we're consistently playing our way and forcing other teams to adjust to us. We've
I'll,
go ahead.
look, I'll use this as an example for. I mean, just to enhance on your take here. If and let's talk about the top two teams, LAFC and Atlanta United, as far as spending, right, and as far as notability, right. So if Elise went to LAFC, they would move everything around. Vela would be a 10, a natural 10. Rossi would be either on the right or left, depending on where they put Elise or whatever, and then they would have their forward. Atlanta United, Pitti would Martinez would be a 10. Joseph would be your center forward. Barco would be on the left, and Elise would be on the right. Easy. At least he's special. I mean, he has talent. He's the most talented player we've had in his Dynamo franchise, maybe ever. He's talented. You just need to find him the right coach to help guide him with his progressions and obviously his mentality on the pitch. Sometimes, I know I've been one to harp on him when he does stupid stuff over little fouls here and there. But here's something else that I'll tell you: 50% of the league would take Quioto as a starting 11 right now. Quioto, somebody who we want to desperately dump off, he would be a starting 11 in 50% of the league.
I mean, I completely agree with you. We're gonna continue to go down this path. There's a reason we're following this path, and this was all, like I said, this all came out of that discussion from this morning. But so, do players with top level talent necessitate high levels of spending? What I mean by that is, does a Darlington Nagbe necessitate $5 million worth of a transfer fee to bring him into the club, and then another $500 to $700,000 a year salary? Or is there a place in the league for teams to spend wisely on talent and focus more on developing the talent that they bring in?
I think it's a little bit of both. I would hate to just be a team where it's just one sided and you're just bringing in players from other places and not developing your own. Because honestly, you have to develop your own. That's you. I mean, unless you're just going to be a free spinning club like the likes of no other, which we're not. We need to develop our academy and bring players from our youth up to help. I mean, that's basically the foundation of the team.
And I'll add to that, your TFC, your Seattle, your LAFC, and your LA Galaxy, your Phillies, etc. They're not relying solely on that top level talent. They're not relying solely on Carlos Vela and De Rossi. They've got a
No,
host of other players that are behind them that are handling some very important pieces of the game. Same thing in TFC, same thing in Seattle. It's not, teams are not comprised of only the superstars that are brought in. Now, the reason I phrased the question the way that I did is I have a kind of a prevailing thought here, and I've asked this before, not of you, just in general, but I want to ask it again. Do the Dynamo have to spend on more than one or two players to spend, and by spend I mean spend more than the league average salary, if you will, on a couple of players that maybe are not existing currently on the team, from outside MLS most likely? Do they need to spend in that way to be good enough to compete for MLS Cup? Is that a requirement from a fan perspective to be considered good enough in the league to compete for MLS Cup?
I think if we're talking about competing this upcoming year, then yeah, I think you're gonna have to sign a marquee agent or two to compete, because we've let teams get so far ahead of us that if you're talking about this upcoming season, then yeah, we would need. Now, if you're talking about in a 5 year span, and now it's totally different, because in a 5 year span, there's so many different variables that can happen. We can develop players, and we can have different players come in, or we can bring in, we can have players like how we have Maudem, sell them off, bring in money, and bring in other players and all that other stuff. But if you're talking about immediate success like next season, then yeah, I think that you would have to bring in a marquee signing or two to kind of close the gap from LAFC and Seattle and Atlanta United. I mean, there's a reason why Seattle and Toronto have been to MLS Cup three of the last 4 years. Because those scouts and those people in charge of those clubs, they go out there and they find these players that are going to make the difference. And while we do have players that make difference here, we need that, I guess, just game changer of a player, for lack of a better term, just like that player that takes us to the next level. And then, maybe we can be up there competing there immediately starting next year. Because like I said prior, the team has talent. There's nothing wrong with the team. The numbers, being at the bottom level of spending, yeah, it sucks. But but the players have talent. And a lot of things can change, with a coaching change. Maybe, like I said, Wilmer was not the best coach. And Tab Ramos, from all his pedigree and everything that we know about him, he's a coach. He's a player's coach, So maybe that's the acquisition that we made that changes this whole thing around. And next season we're in the playoffs doing who knows what.
So Sergio makes a point. I hate this point, but I'm going to read it because I respect the fact that he has done the research enough to be able to make this point. The three teams that focus the most on development, Dallas, Philly, and New York Red Bulls, no MLS Cups. The four teams that spent the most this particular season, LAFC, Atlanta, Seattle, Toronto, were the final four teams in the playoffs. My frustration with that is I don't honestly think that it comes down to the fact that they spent the most. I think it comes down to the fact that all four of them have very good coaches that are able to get the most out of their players. The two teams that spent the most, LAFC, actually LAFC and Atlanta, that spent the most on players, if I'm not mistaken, those are the top two teams this season. Those two teams are out of the playoffs. They did not make MLS Cup final in their respective conferences. In fact, LAFC was the favorite, and they got knocked out by Seattle. Now, Seattle does spend a good amount of money, but they do so very wisely, very intelligently. Look, Ladero's a fantastic player, but he's not the highest priced player in the league. And Christian Roldan is starting for them, and he's out of their academy system. Nuhu is starting for them, or at least he was, and he's out of their academy system. So go ahead.
No, so I'll tell you what I agree with, what Sergio said on the Discord, and what I don't agree with. So as far as like Dallas, Philly, and New York Red Bulls being the teams with the most development, yeah, of course, and then the other four being the most spending. But the thing about those 7 teams that he mentioned All those 7 teams have focused on on developing players. Now, the difference between the latter and the former is that they got the foundation, and then those other 4 teams they went out there and spent on their playmaker, on their game changer. Because if you look at Dallas, FC Dallas, or FC Frisco as we like to call them, who really is their game changer? You look at Philly. Philly, I mean, up to this point, some people might want to say Marco Fabian, but realistically, he's just a name. He wasn't really like, he didn't really take them to like the next level like I think they would have envisioned. New York Red Bulls, after the Thierry Henry era, they went straight development. They went straight to building from the academy and all that great stuff, and they have a strong squad. I mean, and this would be the chance where they can go find that player to bring in that can take them over the hump and make them a known entity in MLS again. Now, as far like LAFC and Atlanta United when they came in, they bought a whole youth team, and they brought in players. They played players from their youth teams on the first team, and the difference between Atlanta and, let's say, Dallas is that Atlanta is willing to spend to bring those game changers in. And I think that New York Red Bulls would be in the same boat if they decided to go back to spending on game changers. They just haven't brought anybody in ever since the whole Thierry Henry and Rafa Marquez and all that fiasco happened.
Agreed with you, and I just
okay, Sean. Let me ask you a question then, since we're on this topic right now.
Okay, I'm looking for a particular tweet, but go ahead and ask.
Yeah, aside from Memo, who have the Dynamo brought up to the squad that they haven't brought in from outside?
I would say they've tried. We've seen it with 3 or 4 other players, and Cisco will laugh when I bring one of them up. They tried to bring in Brian Salazar from the academy, and he was a complete and utter bust. But that was because the kid didn't have a work ethic and wasn't the type of player that was going to become a professional because of how he conducted himself off the pitch. You had Christian Lucatero, who came from the academy, and because he put in the work in a way, but he was also one of those players that expected things to be handed to him when he was in RGV, and because it wasn't handed to him, he got tired of waiting for his opportunity, and he saw fit to go to Liga MX with Necaxa. You had, and there have been other examples like that where Charlie Flores. I can think of a couple other ones. I can't think of a couple other ones off the top of my head, but I know there's a couple. I just can't think of their names.
Okay, so this basically proves to my point what I'm trying to get to. So I mean you named what three, 4 guys, but think about and New York Red Bulls. New York Red Bulls have had 3 or 4 guys that have been transferred up to Europe already from their academy. FC Dallas have had 2 or 3 guys that have been bought from their academy and are playing in Europe. Like who from our academy has really gone and made some, like I said, the academy is the foundation of the team. And the fact is that the Dynamo have not worried about the foundation, and the foundation has cracks. It's been getting cracks where the foundation is started to collapse. There's nobody else to blame but the Dynamo for allowing that to happen. But obviously now we come in and we hired somebody to fix our cracks on our foundation, and but it's going to take some time. But yeah, I think Sean is still looking for that tweet that he's.
No, I'm not gonna. I found the tweet, but I realized the video wasn't in the right format. I was gonna play the Tab Ramos intro video that they used, where it was the hype intro video. It was like 10 seconds, but it was the greatest. Oh, hey, what's up? Thank you for subscribing. I had to find out what it said. We have an actual subscriber that just subscribed. I'm going to move that to the right of my face so that you guys can see that a little better next time. Yes, guys, just so you know, when somebody does subscribe, it does show up in chat live. So pretty freaking cool setup. I'm just proud of that because it actually works. Didn't know it was gonna work. It was awesome. Was not expecting that. Uh, so what was the question you asked me, Mark? I was totally unfocused. Clearly, totally unfocused
no,
on that.
no, no, it's all good. I was basically comparing the dynamo the foundation of a house, basically.
Ah,
But I mean,
yes.
yeah. So I mean, like I said, New York Red Bulls have had players from their academy brought up to the first team and they're playing in Europe somewhere. Same thing with FC Dallas. They've had academy players come up, play with FC Dallas, and get bought up by European giants and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where those teams got a head start, and now they're reaping the benefits of it, and they have foundations on their team where they're not spending that much on these players because obviously these are homegrown players now they're playing for them, while a team like the Dynamo has basically been just not worrying about it, and there's been cracks and cracks growing bigger and bigger on our foundation, which is the academy. And now we finally got somebody to come and fix these cracks. But I mean, obviously, this is going to take some time because the damage has been done and it needs time to get fixed. So we can't expect from one year to another to have, all of a sudden just some great superstar academy player coming up from the ranks and garnishing interest out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean it's been a long-standing issue, which is what you were essentially getting at. But I want to take this a step further. So we've talked about the spending, we've talked about the talent. If Tab retains a majority of the roster and brings in just one or two high-quality players, the team is good enough and makes the playoffs as a fourth to seventh place team in the West. In your opinion, is the season considered a success for Tab and Jordan? And yes. I know you answered that technically earlier, but I thought I'd re-ask it that way.
No, simple answer, yes. I mean, we haven't been in the playoffs the last couple of years. To be back in the playoffs is great. I mean, like I said, there's a huge gap. I mean, I'm not denying there's a gap between us and LAFC, Toronto, Seattle, and Atlanta United. There's a huge gap there. But if we can close that gap up and make the playoffs next year, then yes, next season is a success.
If that were to happen, would it matter to you if the Dynamo were still bottom 5 and spending in MLS?
No, like I said, it didn't matter to me in 2017. Why would it matter to me in 2020?
Good deal. For what it's worth, I agree with you both ways. So, and I had already asked that, but by what is the measurement for you by which the team could consider the season a success this year?
Like I said, this year, I mean, I want to see a better improvement on team. I want to see communication on the pitch. I think that's one of the things that you can tell from a squad, and regardless of sport, whether it's soccer, basketball, football, whatever, if there's no communication between players and what's going on, then obviously the team is not unified, and there's going to be holes in their defense and gaping holes at that, and then you're going to make more mistakes and stuff and you're going to be more vulnerable to attack. So I'm hoping for better communication between the players on the pitch. I'm hoping for a better quality of attacking scheme. I'm hoping for a better formation, I guess, for a better tactical use of the players, and for players to be happy and enjoy their football.
So I want to read back through some of the comments that we saw. So Cisco asked an interesting question, and this is for you, Mark, to answer. Did the Dynamo get Tab Ramos if James Harden is not a minority owner?
I don't really think Ramos is that type of guy to see who's involved with the team. Because I mean, if you look at the press conference, nowhere did he mention about James Harden being involved with the interviewing process and that. Because obviously he was in preseason form with the Rockets, trying to get all that stuff going on. So I mean, it's just one of those things where I don't think Harden really played much of a factor into Ramos's decision to come over here.
So you mean it's just like his basketball game, he doesn't actually play defense as a minority owner either? I'm just kidding. The guy plays defense.
Oh, man, come on,
Anybody who feels otherwise is dumb.
That's my guy.
Cisco does say, I think it's important to note that LAFC spend a ton, but they also have a ton of owners, so it does not hit each owner's pockets nearly as deeply. That's important because it gives them it's a lot easier to spread that investment hit across 100 different owners than it is to spread it across 5 owners. When you're spreading it across 100 owners, that's, realistically, that's, 50,000 each. And you're still talking that's a pretty substantial amount of money, that they're basically building. It comes out to like 5 million. So it's 50,000 for each of them across 100 owners. Or, yeah. That number's correct. Wow, I did the math in my head and it was right. That doesn't happen all the time.
No, and it's one of those things where, like, take Seattle for example, because I think Seattle was like that first team that came and took MLS to the next level, right? So Seattle came in and they had, I think in the beginning they had like 3 owners, and then like one of the owners was Drew Carey, which was the one that I guess that was the start of that celebrity owner type of trend or whatever.
Yeah, which makes me chuckle. That's not the guy I would have expected, but hey, it worked out for them.
It worked out for them, but look what Seattle has done. They spent smart. They scouted. Think of the players that they brought in that were their DP players. They weren't really like world known players. I mean, like Ladero. I knew Ladero because I follow South American soccer. I know of him because he plays with the Uruguay national team. Raul Rodalzo, so however you say his name. Obviously I know
Rui Diaz.
Yeah, he plays with Peru. I know that. I know that, but they're not big time world known players. Like you take you can go the route of LA Galaxy, which you spend on that one player, that marquee player like Zlatan, and you give him 7 to 8 mil, or you can go the Seattle route where you can take that 7 mil and get 3 high quality players, 3 high quality DPs. Because you think about it, you got DPs like Rooney who were 3 mil, you got DPs like Nani who I think is 2.5, and Diego Valario, like I think it's 3.5, and there's different levels of DP money, obviously, but there's different routes to take. And the thing is, like, I think the Dynamo, where they lack on that spending for the DP, is that their DP level of spending is a little too low to make a difference. And I think they just need to raise the bar a little bit. And I think that's where the whole, bringing in James Harden and maybe bringing in another minority owner in the future and stuff like that, where that's going to go and help them, and they're going to feel a little bit more easier spending or spurging that kind of cash out to bring in a little bit of higher quality player.
Sure.
As for a DP.
Yeah, so you mentioned something that I'm going to harp on for just a second. I don't know if you're going to like this or not, but we're going to go there. You mentioned that you feel like the Dynamo probably need to extend their spending on the designated player slot more to become a more competitive team. Essentially, that's what that argument boiled down to. Not argument, but that's what that statement kind of boiled down to. The reason I say that is, what if Elise's actual value is closer to that $5 million range in terms of transfer fee? What if his value is more like a 1 million, 2 million player in MLS for another club? Let's use the LAFC example that we mentioned earlier. Let's say he goes to LAFC. They decide to trade for him because they can see him as a marquee piece of their team. In the attack, they feel like they can partner him with De Rossi and Vela, and that sets up their top 4 attack to become the best in the league, bar none, no questions asked. Next season, they're going to win it all. Not that that's going to happen. Let's say it does. If they then turn around and up his salary to $2 million, what does that say about the player? So the reason I ask it that way is, what if it's not the fact that we don't have players that are good enough talent-wise to be that level of DP for other clubs? Now, I'm not saying they're necessarily a Zlatan or they're that level, but let's say that they're a Nico Ladero, or they're a Pavone or a Barco. Just in general terms, they're good enough to be at that level within MLS, talent-wise. But the reason they haven't unlocked that talent to reach that level is because of coaching. So is it that we're not spending, or is it that we're spending in a different way to get roughly the same level of talent ultimately? It's just that the talent hasn't really been unlocked and hasn't been properly coached up to become better than they are.
Well, see, that's why I'm interested in to see, like when you asked earlier if if the acquisition within MLS would be, if that was the only acquisition, would that make me happy? I'm like, I would say yes, because obviously the coaching is what made the difference. Because everybody else upped their level. Because if you're going to basically have the same team and that team goes on and goes to the playoffs and makes some noise in the playoffs, then obviously what's the difference? The coaching, right? So, and I'll toss this back to you like this. Imagine if we just did a straight swap, right? Hypothetically speaking, with LAFC, they took Elise and we took Rossi. Do you think their level of quality would change? Do you think Elise would rise? Do you think Rossi would fall because of the change in scenery and change of team and change of tactic?
Yes, I do actually.
Yeah, and I agree too as well. So people are looking at Rossi that he can get sold this transfer window for upwards of 15 mil, right? And we're talking about at least if he were to go to LAFC, they would move Rossi around to give him a spot in that starting 11, right? So obviously we know Elise has the talent. It's just that he hasn't been able to harness and grow
Yeah.
and progress. He had that one progression where now you have people from Europe starting to call for him, but he's been stagnant now. He's been stagnant for the last year and a half. He hasn't progressed, and I blame Wilmer. I hate to be blunt about it, but yeah, it was Wilmer's fault. I blame Wilmer for a lot of things, but if Tab comes in and you see the release of 2017 and 2018, the first half of 2018, and he's out there killing it, and he's double-digit goals, double-digit assists, and then the bad thing about this is that he's on his final year of contract. So even if he leaves on the free, it sucks. But it's one of those things where I think that at least has the potential talent to be a DP player of a magnitude of a Diego Valeri or Ignacio Patiti or those $3-4 million level DPs.
And that's really the point that I think some fans need to understand and need to take a moment to figure out and grasp. It's that it's not that we haven't had the talent or the quality of talent. It's that we have yet to figure out how to unlock that talent, how to utilize and leverage that talent, and how to help develop that talent. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter how much money the Dynamo ultimately spend year over year. Cisco made a really good point, or Callow made a really good point of, the Dynamo have the third highest spending increase over the last season behind Real Salt Lake and Columbus Crew. We spent more money increasing year over year than most other teams in the entire league did, with the exception of two other teams. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's not that LAFC and Atlanta and TFC and Seattle, they're making big cash splashes at one time, and then they're tapering off spending for 3 years, 4 years, however long it ends up being, and then they'll make another splash. It's not that they're increasing their spending year over year. It's that they're increasing it in spurts. And if you look at those spurts and you factor in everything else that other teams are paying, this league really does come out about the same. Maybe a little bit in favor of Seattle and TFC, but not as much as they make it seem. Not as much as Atlanta has made it seem. Because what they're doing, those specific teams, what they're doing differently, like I said, they're doing that splash cash thing, but they're also paying lower salaries for their DPs, and they're just paying higher transfer fees, and then they're basically spreading those transfer fees across multiple seasons, or they're just paying those transfer fees in one season, and they're not actually attributing those transfer fees to the player's salary, and instead it's just kind of a wash as far as their investment goes. One of the other things Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, but also think about it. I mean, think about like a LA Galaxy, right? I mean, they have the highest paid player in the league, right? With Zlatan, right? And
no,
but think about
he's not the highest paid player, not by a long shot. No, his salary is not that high.
He's at 7.2 mil.
He's a TAM player. His salary is not that high. It doesn't hit the
No,
budget
no,
that way.
no, no. That was last season. But his
Oh,
new
they just
deal,
increased it.
yeah. So that's why they had to get rid of Giovanni.
That's why they
But
didn't make MLS Cup.
but anyways, but you look, but if you take LA Galaxy for example, look at the players they have surrounded around Zlatan. Aside from the other two DPS, obviously, but like you look at those players' salaries, it's 70,000 here, 80,000 here, 100,000 here. While you look at the Dynamo, like you look at all their salaries for the most part, everybody, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, 600,000. You got players, making six figures, good money, because you obviously you brought players in from other places and all that stuff. That's why I lean back towards, the academy has to be built to have those other type of players. But I digress. But yeah, but the Dynamo, if you take out the DPS and you just looking at the club at the middle players, the Dynamo are up there in spending. Now obviously now you start throwing in DPS, yeah. Obviously the Dynamo don't match up as far as DP spending goes, but as far as the overall team and the build of the team, Dynamo do spend some money.
You're absolutely right. Um, I I don't need to, I don't want to beleaguer that specific point, but I think I just feel like it's important to keep that front of mind and front and center, because I think there's this huge amount of weight by some fans placed specifically on spending. And spending is a result of two different things. Number one, it is a result of how much a team is willing to spend on a player, and two, some formulaic, eventual equivalency that comes out to explain the value of the player. Now, that's not the actual value of the player. That's the value of the player based upon the team he is going to, based upon his willingness to go to the team, based upon the quality of his agent and how much money his agent is able to eke out, based upon the availability of the player in general, based upon the team that he's coming from. All of these other factors come into play. Why is that important? Because when you pay for a player, you aren't just paying for the player. You're paying for all of the other idiosyncrasies and variables that go along with that player, and that is what creates these overly inflated amounts of not just salaries, but transfer fees that are astronomically ridiculous for the level of talent of players coming into the league. Now, you pay that price for a player like a Wayne Rooney because you know the quality that you're getting. That doesn't mean you're paying that amount of money for the player themselves, because you're not just paying that amount of money for Wayne Rooney. You're paying that amount of money for Wayne Rooney plus his rights to merchandising within MLS and alongside of all the endorsements that he's going to get, all the opportunities that's going to open up for him as a player on a DC United, not just in the DC metro area, but in MLS in general across all of the United States. You're paying for Zlatan Ibrahimovic, not just for the name Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but for the player that you're getting, you're also getting that marketability. That is the one thing that I wish the Dynamo would spend a little bit more money on. It is on the marketability of said player. They brought in an Albert Elise, who, frankly, the last three seasons especially, 2 seasons, could have been an absolute marquee player on their team, and that they could have marketed a whole hell of a lot better than they have to bring more fans into the stadium and get more fans excited. Instead, he's been kind of a non-factor as much on the pitch as off the pitch, not because of the player, because his talent we know is good enough, because we know that his personality is good enough. We know that his heart is good enough. We've seen it in what he does in the off season. And what he does during the season for the kids in Honduras and the schools that he helps out there back home. Look, the guy has a heart of gold. I don't care what you think about him as a person. The guy is a great person. But somehow that doesn't get marketed. Somehow these players aren't marketed effectively. We're just the Dynamo. We are a team, but we're not. The players have no personality when it comes to the team.
And you're right. I mean, and all you have to go do is just go look at the top 25 selling jerseys every year in and year out. How many times do you see a Dynamo player on there? Just one, anyone, doesn't matter. They're not there. But in the top 10, you have 3 Atlanta United players. You have 2 LAFC players. You have 2 Seattle players. I mean, and then is it a coincidence that these players and these teams are the same teams that are successful year in and year out? It's not. It's it goes hand in hand. You pay the premium price because you know what you're gonna get from that player, which is success. You
So
know, just take in part the Rooney transaction. When Wayne Rooney came to DC United was the last place team in the Eastern Conference. Rooney comes in and they make the playoffs. How is that so? It's the same team. You just added one player because that one player is the game changer. That one player brought in positive energy and took the stacks of crap that they had going and brought that team out, gave them a new uh gave them a second wind and carried them on his back and took them to the playoffs. You pay the premium for a player like that. Imagine if we at the Dynamo paid the premium and brought a player in like that when the Dynamo were going through that 10, 11 game winless streak, and brought in a fresh. Because I mean, think about it. We missed the playoffs, but what, 6 points? So there's no within those 11 to 13 games that we were losing in a row or just getting draws. You mean to tell me if you would have brought in a player of quality and impact, they couldn't have found two or three more wins in those 13 games and made the playoffs? MLS is close. It's so close. These teams are not like, aside from like I said, the top echelon of teams like LAFC and Atlanta United that are spinning. The rest of the league, they're really close. I mean, you're basically one player away from making your season a complete 360 from going from bad to good.
yes, I agree with you. Um,
So
One of the questions that came up, and I know you did a little research when you got home today from work.
yeah.
So the question that was asked was, are there any U.S. men's national team players that would be that could be marketable or would be marketable? We'll dive into that here in a second. But you did some research about a few players that you think would be good acquisitions for the Dynamo. Let me ask it in this way to you, Mark. Are any of those players marketable personality players, or are they more of the same from that would fit the Dynamo current mold?
Well, okay. So I did it under the same circumstances as the Darlington Nagby acquisition, right? So it's not a player from a foreign country or it's not a big time player. It's within the MLS mechanism of trading within MLS team. Okay, so obviously I'm not trading for Joseph Martinez or Carlos Vela or anything like that.
All right,
So
that's it, Mark. You're not allowed to be GM. I'm sorry, you're fired. Go ahead,
no,
continue.
so I mean, I got a couple players here that I saw as interesting as far as positions that I think we need to get better quality at, which is the number 10 spot and another winger, obviously, since we're trying to push Quioto out. So I found a lower end player. I mean, as far as salary, a lower tier player, higher a mid tier player, and a high tier player, and then a few names here and there that look kind of interesting to me. So the low tier player was Latif Blessing. For those of who don't know, plays for LAFC, and he's kind of like the third fiddle of that top three attacking
I'll take
options
a
they have.
I'll take a straight up swap with Blessing and Kyoto. They can have Kyoto if we can have Blessing. I'm totally
So
down for
so
that.
so and think about it. I mean, this kid. I mean, he had 6 goals and 6 assists this season. I mean, he was rotating around that area because I mean they were still trying to figure out what they're going to do with that top three. And then when Brian Rodriguez came in from the young kid from Uruguay, obviously kind of pushed him out, which the Dynamo can pounce on that. I mean, this kid's only making 94,000 a year. And in 2018, I mean, he had the same 6 goals, six assists. So he's consistent. He doesn't cost a lot, and he knows how to win because he's been in a winning environment. You see what a Christian Ramirez brought to the team from a winning environment. Um, the mid
Hey, can I
tier player.
wait? Can I add something
Okay,
to that? I
yeah,
absolutely salivate at the thought of Blessing opposite Elise with Ramirez up at top of that formation. Oh my God, I feel bad for defenders. Okay, you can go.
yeah. So the mid tier one is a name that we kind of know familiar. Michael Barrios Now he played with Mauro in Colombia, and he's making 500,000 a year. And this past season, 5 goals, 15 assists.
Dude,
Now
you
he's
did. Can I just say you did some damn good research? Continue.
so so now this guy he's kind of on and off. So this season, 5 goals, 15 assists. Last season he had 6 goals, 6 assists, but the year prior he had 3 goals and 14 assists. So this guy I would want him more on my as my 10 instead of a winger or whatever. But yeah, and especially because he has the familiarity of playing with Mauro Manotas, and I think Mauro's been quoted to talking with him like, hey, come over, this and that. If you push for it, something like that. So I mean, that would be something I would love to see happen.
Well,
And
and here's the thing. I'm going to add fuel to the fire on Michael Barrios for one reason. Morrow stated in an interview, I want to say it was with The Athletic, that one of his desires is to play with Michael Barrios because they played together in Colombia, and they felt that together they were absolutely unbeatable. And for Morrow, a player who has ascended to the level that he has, to say that about another player, I'm all for Michael Barrios for that very. If Morrow's going to stick around for another season, hell yeah, let's try the Michael Barrios, experiment with Barrios. And Barrios can take Quioto's spot. He could take Martinez's spot. I don't care. I just want to see Morrow and Barrios together because the love that those two have for each other would be incredible. Like just watching it would be incredible.
so I see on the chat, Cisco's talking about Quintero. You're getting ahead of me, man. Hold on before we get to Quintero because I want to talk about that. But so this is my high tier player that I would like to go after. And to be honest, when I looked at this guy's numbers and all this stuff, like this guy, honestly, he's available, man. He is available, and if the Dynamo really want him, they can make this happen because the team that he's playing on currently, they've kind of like pushed him out. They kind of pushed him off because, of the quality of players that they bring in. And I'm talking about Hector Villalba with Atlanta United.
Villalba?
Now, yeah, Villalba. So his 2017, which is Atlanta United's inaugural season, 13 goals, 11 assists. Wow, right? 2018, when Barco came in, they wanted to play Barco ahead of him because obviously they spend money on Barco. 7 goals, 9 assists. And then this year, obviously, they brought Pitien. He was hurt. He didn't get a lot of plays. He didn't play a lot. He was on the bench, because he had other players of quality in front of him. So he only had one goal and 4 assists, but he only played 15 games. So, but his base salary is $750K. And he's 25 years old. Can be a winger, can be a 10, and he's a great player. It's just he's in an unfortunate predicament because he plays for a team that is willing to spend and bring in players like Atlanta United. They bring in the Barcos, they bring in the Miguel Almirones, they bring in the Pity Martinez's, and unfortunately for Villalba, he has to ride the bench, but he is a great player, a player of great quality that would be just crazy if the Dynamo would be able to get their hands on him. Now going back to the Discord chat with, Cisco asking about Quintero. So I want to compare Quintero with Villalba. Darwin's base salary is 1.75 mil. Basically double Villalba's. Darwin's 32 years old. He's 25. He had 10 goals, 5 assists, but he been hurt here and there, whatever. 2018, he had 11 goals, 15 assists. So, but Darwin, I have to look at the age, especially when you're spending that type of money and, and with the Dynamo. And then you talking about marketability. I think the marketability of Quintero and Villalba are pretty much on par. Obviously, Darwin has had more shine because he's starting, and all that. But I would think that Villalba would have the same shine if he was able to start as well. And plus, he's cheaper and younger. And I think he can do the same thing, if not better, if he was given the opportunity to play and start Atlanta United.
Do you think Villalba is the type of player that is the game changer that the Dynamo are looking for?
I think he could be because aside from being another Latino player, and falling under the type of player I think that Tab Ramos is looking for. This guy he plays multiple positions, and I think the Dynamo would like to have players that can play more than one position, so they can move them around and they can like kind of jigsaw puzzle whatever they want to do. Depending on what kind of formation they're trying to go move on with. Because like I said, these three players that I've mentioned, they all can play wingers. They all can play midfield. So I mean, it can be a carousel of those four positions being moved around, and who somebody can be here, somebody can be here, somebody can be here. So I think that's always a positive to have players to be able to play different positions. And I think that if he was able to get playing time here with the Dynamo, and me thinking that the formation that Tab's going to go with is the 4-3-3, but more of a more aggressive 4-3-3 than what Wilmer did. I think he would. I think he would blossom here. I think you're looking at a 15 goal scorer a season.
I mean, 15 goals seems like such a lofty goal, but I
But
mean,
I,
15
I honestly
goals
believe
is.
it.
I mean, 15 goals is not that far from what Elise did last year. Not this season, but the past season.
Yeah,
That's not.
but imagine two Elises,
No,
one
I
on
know,
one on the right side, one on the
absolutely.
left side.
No, I'm
So
just sitting here going, okay, how do I get all three? And I honestly believe the Dynamo could easily be in the running for Villalba if Atlanta are willing to give him up. I believe the Dynamo could easily be in the running for a Latif Blessing if LAFC were willing to give him up. I believe that the
but
Dynamo could be in the running for a Michael Barrios if FCD are willing to give him up. And that's what we run into. It's and you know this, Mark, and I know I'm just kind of reiterating something you're already aware of, but it's these players may be considered quote unquote available because the teams aren't really utilizing them right now. But a lot of teams like keeping that depth in their roster so that in the event that a player in front of them does get injured, let's say Pity Martinez gets injured next season, they've got Villalba who can step in and be that guy that can take over, and they're not losing any real drop off from Pity to Villalba, maybe a tiny bit, but not a huge amount. Um,
but see, the thing is, no, but see, the thing is about what you're saying is like, yeah, don't get me wrong, yeah, Atlanta United, they have a wealth of riches having a player like Villalba riding the bench for them, but it only comes a certain time where a player can only sit for the bench for that long, and especially a player of his stature, where in the first two seasons of their existence, he was scoring goals, he was making assists. Honestly, they didn't have to pay for. But they didn't have to bring in Pity Martinez. They could have just gave that role to Hector Villalba and saved themselves 15 million transfer money. But I mean, but they obviously, Atlanta United, they're in the game of buying players and selling them for higher fees, and that's fine, right? But if I was Villalba and if I was in his shoes, and every player wants to play, I don't care what they say. Every player wants to play, and agents want their players to play because agents will need to make money too, right? If I was his agent right now, I would be out here Monday during this trade deadline for MLS, finding out which team needs a damn cam or a winger, and see who's willing to give Atlanta the most gam, tam, and damn to get them to that team. And if I'm the Houston Dynamo, I'm picking up that phone. I'm saying, hey, I'm willing to give him Darlington Nagby gam damn tam money. So which like what a mill? I'm willing to give that. Yeah,
for Villalba,
go ahead.
I think you're probably talking. I think he could be
Hey,
had.
two mil,
No, I think he
two
could be.
mil.
I think he could be had for probably close to 750, $800,000 in allocation money, split between
Dude,
Gam and Tam. No, I'm totally serious. Based on how
cool,
MLS transactions work, that wouldn't surprise me if you could have him for that
cool.
price.
Then let's do it. Pick up the phone right now. Call somebody over there and tell them to dial Atlanta United right now and tell them to make that happen.
I'm
If
gonna.
if, if that's the look, if that's the move and that's the only move we make this season, I'm happy.
Sure. I mean, I'd be
That's
happy if that was the only move we made too. It wouldn't be, but I'd be happy if it was. Here's the
I mean,
thing: it has to be. We have to give Tab Ramos a little bit of time to work and to evaluate. He's got to kind of know what he's got and what he's working with. And Matt Jordan has scouts that are already out there looking for other players. It doesn't have to be just players in MLS. There are, more Elises that are out there that are untapped talents that are, riding the benches and could become loan to buys from other places that would be as good as Elise has been, and probably even better in the long run under a Tab Ramos versus a guy, Elise who was under Wilmer and Owen Coyle and Wade
Yeah.
Barrett and Davey Arnault. It's we have to give them a little bit of room to work. But I mean, I completely agree with you. I think the three players that you specifically found, I can't find fault in bringing in any of those three. And it would not surprise me if the Dynamo make a move or two within MLS via trade is going to surprise some people. They did it with Christian Ramirez. It would not surprise me to see them do it again. They have the
Yeah.
capability to do it. Matt Jordan has shown he is good enough as a GM to make that type of a move when nobody sees it coming. Nobody sees the Dynamo making that type of move right now. So what better time to make that type of move than right now? And here's the thing. There are teams that would like to use the allocation order to their benefit. The Dynamo sit third in the allocation order. It only takes Columbus and I don't remember who, Chicago, I think is number one, something like that. It only takes the other two teams that are ahead of us, signing a player each from the allocation order for suddenly that allocation order slot actually becomes fairly valuable, and you can leverage that into a longer term, more adequate trade overall. I know that Sergio posted earlier the order of events that are going to take place in the next couple of months in regard to just the various drafts. There's like 5 drafts that take place between the end of the season and the after MLS Cup and the beginning of the preseason. I'll see if I can find those. There it
Yeah.
is. So
Well,
we've got the trade window that opens November 11th, which is in 4 days,
Monday.
which is Monday, and it closes on the 13th. So that's a couple of days for the Dynamo to make some moves. The
And that's
2019.
with and that's within my MLS. So that's why I used the mechanism that I did for those players because I wanted to just focus on that little 2-day transfer window within the league.
Sure, and that's fair. The 2019 MLS expansion draft happens November 19th. We are clear and free from that. We are not don't have to participate in that because we lost Eric Alexander in the last expansion draft. Roster decision deadline is November 21st. Now that's for players who have a team or a player option. Those options must be opted for or opted in or opted out by November 21st. Those players that have their team options or their player options not opted in, they will then enter the end of year waiver and free agency drafts, which take place November 25th. Or sorry, end of year waivers and free agency. Free agency isn't a draft. November 25th, and then the re-entry draft stage 1 happens the 26th, which is the day after the waiver draft. Usually, 1 maybe 2 players get taken in stage 1. Nobody gets taken in the waiver draft. It just never happens. Free agents may be on the move, but there's very specific requirements. It's not like the NFL or NBA where you can be a free agent after you've served, basically 2 or 3 years and a team decides they don't want you anymore. For MLS, you have to have, I think it's 7 years of service in MLS, 8 years of service in MLS, and have to be at least 28 years old, I think is how they figured that out. And then stage 2 of the reentry draft takes place on December 3rd. Now, that is important to watch because that is where, historically, the Dynamo have picked up a couple of players in the past and made great use of those players in particular at the time that we picked them up. And then there's also the super draft that happens in January or somewhere around there, January 8th or 10th or something like that next year. So, lots of.
So
Oh, go ahead.
so Sean, since you brought that up right now, so I went and dug a little deeper into this player thing, and so you know how one of my favorite players of the Dynamo, even though he had a little brief stint here, was Vicente Sanchez, and I like the fact that how people respected him, for what he did, and his past ventures in other clubs, whatever. So there's a player that would be available in those re-entry drafts or whatever, all those other mechanisms you're talking about that I think would help Tab as like Vicente did with Wilmer in that first season. And honestly, I think he would be like real cheap and real and real reasonably priced because all he wants to do is just play football. I mean, he was a DP once, and obviously he's of age now. He's 34, 35, and I'm talking about Federico Higuain, who, for those who don't know, he played with Columbus Crew. He won an MLS Cup with them. I believe. I'm not too sure. I might be
He did.
thinking of somebody
No, he
else.
did. He did.
Okay. But I mean, talented player. I mean, during his heyday, I mean, the dude was, uh, I mean, this past season he only had one goal and five assists, but he only played in 12 games. But the year prior, 6 goals, 9 assists. If I can get five goals and 5 assists from a player who's gonna play 10, 15 minutes at the end of the game, just to give me a little spark like Vicente used to do in 2017, I'm all for that, man. And plus, it's another veteran presence, somebody who knows how to win, somebody who can help steer these young players that we have, into the right direction and bring more of a professionalism to the pitch.
So at his age, let me ask you a very realistic question. Would you trade Quioto and a little bit of allocation money for Federico Higuain? And I'm totally serious. And the
Well,
reason I asked that question, I realize Columbus just acquired via trade, technically once the trade window opens, acquire or are looking to or going to acquire Darlington Nagbe. But that does not preclude them from getting a Quioto as well. And we have seen the rumor that the Dynamo
yeah.
are looking to trade potentially Quioto, and I've seen the rumor that Quioto is, or that there have been rumors that Columbus want to trade for Quioto. So, would you
So
trade Quioto for Higuain plus a little bit of allocation money going back to Columbus?
okay, so well, here's the thing with that. Higuain would actually be free. He's not on contract no more, so he would be free. But
What if he signed a 1 year
there's a little
contract
bit.
with Columbus before he was traded? I mean, it
Well, hold
happened.
on, hold
It
on.
happens in other
Well,
leagues.
well, yeah, yeah. But let me tell you what I heard from that press conference I told you about earlier, and then maybe there's a reporter there from the Honduran newspaper that was at the press conference, and he asked Matt Jordan specifically, "Hey, what's Kyoto's situation? What's going on? Like, what's the facts on this, right?" And obviously, Matt Jordan gave him the political answer, like, "Hey, he's still under contract with us, but we're in talks with his representation to find out what we can do to to benefit the player and the club, right?" So, from what it sounded like, it kind of went along with what the rumors were, that he's going to sign an extension with the Dynamo, 1 year extension, but he's going to get traded to another MLS club, and that's where the whole rumor circulated about Columbus Crew being the more aggressive bidder for Quioto with a $2 million uh, allocation money thing or whatever, and Gam Tam and all the other stuff to the Dynamo for Quioto. Basically, just to say, hey, you know what? Don't talk to nobody else. Here's 2 mil. Give us Quioto. That's basically how it was presented in that little article, whatever, in that tweet. But or how I took it, because beforehand I didn't even think the Dynamo would get anything for Quioto within MLS, especially because of all the stuff that's been going on in MLS with Quioto, and how kind of highly publicized it is that he was kind of disbanded from the squad. So why would anybody come in with any kind of offer for him, right? But then when I saw this, I was like, well, let's take that all off the table, his issues or whatever happened with that. Kyoto's still a talented player, and Columbus Crew have their new coach, have a coach in Khaled Porter, who understands that, hey, speed kills, and Kyoto has speed. Kyoto is also experienced in MLS, and Kyoto has also had success in MLS as an individual. He scores goals, he provides assists. He's that player. If he were the same thing with Elise, if he were able to have the right proper coaching, who knows what kind of player Kyoto could be. Kyoto could easily be a ten goal scorer in MLS, 10 goals, 10 assists easily. His first season, he had 7 goals and 6 or 7 assists. You know,
Yeah, he was right.
and
He was right on the cusp of that first season.
yeah. So I mean, so aside from all the behavior issues, teams look at that and they're like, dude, this is a talented player. All that other BS aside, he's a talented player, and he is. Obviously we have this bad taste in our mouth from this whole situation that he's been in with the Dynamo for the last month and a half. That's why we're trying to like push him out. And that's why you're throwing the question of whether if Columbus Crew out for me Hua-Yin and a bag of chips, would I take it? but but yeah, dude, like if Columbus Crew comes with 2 mil, Quioto buy. Like I said on one of my tweets, buy.
Oh, that's
If they
that's
can,
not even a question. If they're coming with two
yeah,
mil, that
exactly,
look, that's allocation
exactly.
money you can use to go get Villalba. I'm just saying.
Um, for sure. And like I said, it's the same thing with the. I mean, like I said, I mean, all BS aside, when you just look at the talent of the player, Kyoto's a talented player, and under the right coaching, and this is facts about any player under the right coaching, that player that this like what they say, one man's treasure is another man's treasure. I could easily see Quioto scoring 10 goals for Columbus next season if Porto can get to him and bring out the best of him.
Absolutely, and he kind of fits that winger style that Caleb likes to have too, and has like to have on his team. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. There's obviously still a lot of action to take place with all the different trade windows and drafts and everything. And let's not forget that the transfer window opens, excuse me, basically at the beginning of January, and runs into early February. And so, we're likely to see some moves. Now, the number of moves, I don't know. We're probably likely to see between the drafts and everything else that take place, at least two, maybe three kind of key moves for this offseason. But I also know that to some extent, I think Tab is not. I don't think Tab's coming into this going, I need to make a huge roster overhaul. I feel like Tab understands what he has in front of him roster wise. And I think he's just evaluating whether he can upgrade, working with Matt Jordan, whether he can upgrade a couple of specific key positions, and whether he's comfortable with the players that are there. Now, I'm going to throw something out there. Everybody has really targeted Tomas Martinez as being a player that just isn't good enough. He's looked slow. He's not in the right positions. His passes don't make it to the right places, etc. I get the frustration. Trust me, I'm frustrated with him as well. But why not give him a season under Tab? Why not see if Tab can actually turn him into the player that we expected him to be, that I believe he's got the talent to be? Now, I will say that there was a time that I talked to a former Dynamo player, I won't say which one, talked to a former Dynamo player about Tomas Martinez specifically. And Tomas Martinez, at the time, it was he had maybe had 3, 4, 5 months with the team. He hadn't been here very long. And I was told basically that the evaluation of the player at that point was he's very slow to respond and react to plays that are happening around him or near him, that he's slow in his decision-making process, those sorts of things. And I get that, but I think some of that can be coached up. And I think he has enough creative talent. We've seen it in some of the through balls that he's played this season, even when the team was struggling. We've seen it in some of just the movements that he's made, some of those goals that he's had. Look, the kid has talent, and I believe that Tab Ramos might be the type of coach that could actually help the kid develop the way we all hoped and expected that he would. And I wouldn't mind, maybe instead of making the move for your number 10 right now, maybe you give Tomas a preseason under Tab and you see what you have then. Then you could make a trade in MLS when a team's decided that they need a specific position, or they've decided that, Tomas is good enough for them, and you get the allocation money and you go from there. But I'm a little bit hesitant to just, okay, the experiment's a failure, let's move on, because I think that Tomas has also been similar to a Quioto, similar to an Elise. He's been the recipient of very bad coaching, and a lack of coaching. And that's not a Tab Ramos type of style. Tab Ramos is going to be the type of player or type of coach that's going to coach. In the type of coach that Tab Ramos is, he unlocks attacking talent. He's not very well defensive-minded coach. He's not going to. Our defenders are not going to improve under Tab Ramos. I'll tell you that right now. but our attackers definitely have the possibility to improve under Tab. And so I want to give Tab an opportunity to maybe turn Tomas into what we all thought he could be. And then, hey, guess what? That money wasn't a wash anymore. Now we're not getting rid of a player that maybe goes to Columbus or goes somewhere else and suddenly scores, 10 goals and he has 15 assists. I'd much rather keep the player if that's the talent level he has, and Tab is capable of unlocking that. I'd much rather give Tab that opportunity. And again, that all comes back to the same thing I've been asking all along, which, is there ever a question that we don't have the talent? I think the answer is no. We definitely. I mean, there's not. We definitely have the talent. It's just a matter of whether former coaches have really done well to utilize that talent and properly evaluate the talent that was available to them.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you to an extent, and I think I would like to see Tab get a hold of Tomas. But the only problem that I have with that situation is that the way the scheduling is set up for MLS, so their preseason is February after January transfer window. So if you didn't get nobody in January, obviously you have to wait till the summer, right? And then you give them preseason, and you give them, like, let's say 5 regular season games, right? And you still see there's no improvement. So you're still you're kind of stuck. Who's your backup 10 if Tomas it doesn't improve and you have to wait till the summer? That would have been my only hesitation with going that route. What I would like is to for him to identify somebody maybe in RGV or somebody from the academy that can come up and maybe challenge somebody that's hungry, a player that's hungry that that might want to challenge them, to let them know, like, hey, I don't care that we brought you from Portugal and paid this amount, blah blah. If this young kid over here is playing better than you, this kid is gonna take your minutes. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Look, there's gonna
Um,
there's gonna be attacking mids that are available in the draft coming out of college that are gonna be good enough to challenge Tomas. I'm perfectly okay with going that route, or as you noted, somebody from RGV that's already there, or perhaps Brazos Valley Cavalry. I don't know, but those players exist out there that are good enough to at least challenge, and I want to see exactly that. I want to see a second player brought in that's right at that level, that's good enough and hungry enough to push Tomas as hard as they can. And if they win, okay, that's fine. I'm willing to accept if a player can beat Tomas in preseason, that player's earned his opportunity, and I'm willing to find a way to ship out Tomas. But if we don't even give Tomas that opportunity, I feel like at that point that is a complete and utter failure by the club, because again, we know even as fans that Tomas has not been coached up, that what was put in front of him was a very subpar situation where we all kind of thought it would work because of the prior season, but we have come to find out that Wilmer just wasn't that good of a coach, and the players were making it work in spite of his coaching, not because of his coaching. And so that's what I completely agree with you. I would, that situation right there, I would love to see.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not gonna be one of those Tomas, like just knocking him down, because I mean we forget that prior to last season, the season before when he first came in, I mean the dude had double-digit assists. I mean he's good. I mean he has quality. I mean I don't think the Dynamo would have just paid and brought him in just to be a sloppy 10 or whatever. They saw something in him. They have film on him. They have scouts out there, and they like what they saw. And like I said, what everybody forgets that Wilmer's coaching tactics and his way of approaching the players, and you know, I guess interacting with the players and giving the players direction is doesn't work for everybody. And you've noted before in prior shows. I mean, he would just tell players, "Hey, get on the pitch and go run." That's not coaching. That's not giving direction. That's not giving a player confidence and to do what needs to be done to help win the game. But like I said, yeah, I'm interested to see what Ramos does with Tomas. And like I said, I just, for players on the fringe like that where we have question marks about, yeah, I want to see a younger player from underneath, from our academy or from our affiliate teams, clubs or whatever, just be there and be given the opportunity to push him and possibly surpass him because look, this club needs to grow and they need to get better. And like I said, I believe Ramos is that type of coach to, hey, I don't care that you were brought in from wherever part of the world. If this kid from the back and if this kid and our from our backyard is doing better than you are, he's getting the minutes, not you. That's what I want to see. I want to
Yeah,
see the better player play.
And it's definitely going to be a matter of, I've talked about before. There are players that are just not practice players. They don't show up in practice, but you put them on a pitch during a match and they show up. I think Tab is he's intelligent enough to recognize those situations, but I do think there is going to be it's a meritocracy. You earn your spot. It's not given to you anymore. And for all that Wilmer talked about that, he had certain players that it was their spot no matter what happened. And so go ahead.
And I think it got to the point where Wilmer was coaching, was putting players in because they knew he knows what kind of quality they had, but obviously that player wasn't in a good form during that time period and maybe needed to be sat down for a match or two. But he knew that he was playing for that he had to play these players to keep his job because he knew he was getting to that point where I'm about to get fired because of these poor performances, and it's one of those things where when you put different variables like that, like it can sway a coach's judgment in putting different players in for another one. Because I mean, like I said, there's been a couple of games where I saw at least play like shit, and I'm like, man, if he's gonna play like that, then why the hell? Why would you even play him? If he's gonna play like that, you could have just put in Tommy Mack, or whoever. I don't care. Somebody who wants to play. Somebody who wants to show up and play on the pitch.
I would have given you any other player but Tommy Mack, man. Come on.
Well, I mean, I was just trying to think of somebody, but I can't think of anybody right now.
Marlon Hairston? You mean Marlon Hairston?
Yeah, Marlon Hairston. There you go.
I mean, hell, bring on friggin' Memo. I mean, yeah, I agree with you completely. So with that being said, it is well past our 1 hour mark. I told you if you guys engaged, we would keep talking. That wasn't a lie. I am thinking it's probably time to shut down the stream for the evening. But guys, look, if you're still listening to us, which if you are, first of all, kudos, because it's now an hour and a half in, a little bit more than an hour and a half in, and you guys have hung tough and hung strong. Thank you. Number two, please like the video, like the stream, share the channel, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Subscribing to the channel does us a favor. It gets us closer to being able to get a custom channel URL, which means we can have youtube.com/Generation Orange or Gen Orange Radio or whatever we go with. So really appreciate you guys subscribing. Really appreciate you guys following along. Make sure you share the stream as well. Share the channel. Let people know that we go live on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Right now, we're tentatively scheduled to go next week again, Thursday at 7 p.m. Central, unless something changes, but we will let you guys know. Follow us on Twitter as well, at Gen Orange Radio. That is where we will post updates about our streams and our times in case things have to change due to work or personal life. But really, guys, thank you very much. We appreciate you guys. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you as well, sir.
Have a good one, guys.
There will be music in just a second, everyone. Patience.
Think it was a Honda, a 99 that we drive and play Nirvana. It never started right away, it didn't wanna let me get too far from here. I was still too young to realize that these summertime drives, they don't last your whole lifetime. I think it was a Honda, I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I think it was a Honda, a 99 that we drive and play Nirvana. It never started right away, it didn't wanna let me get too far from here. I was still too young to realize that these summertime drives, they don't last your whole lifetime. I think it was a Honda, I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I'm running out of karma, I don't think that I'll make it any longer. But with you by my side I feel stronger than I've ever been before. Still too young to realize that these summertime drives, they don't last your whole lifetime. I think it was a Honda, I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I run another light to get through the night. Scared as shit, but I know that I'm alright. We were 17, pure like kerosene. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. You protected me, you were my sunscreen. I'm running out of karma, I don't think that I'll make it any longer. But with you by my side I feel strong